The last two episodes of The Mandalorian have left the fandom in anticipation on what will happen next. 3 animated Star Wars shows are rumored to be in the works. Ahsoka is rumored to be in 3 future Star Wars films, and George Lucas reveals all on why he didn't make the sequel trilogy. All that and more here on Chatooine. Well, welcome back to Chatooine, everyone. I'm your host, Star Wars Only, joined with Darth Daddy Lunga and the Goldman. And here on Chatooine, we simply talk about the news, topics in the fandom, and simply chat about Star Wars. So if you have any questions for us, make sure to leave them in the live chat or send a super chat question so you can be guaranteed an answer to your question before the show's over. We're also on Spotify and everywhere else. If you listen to podcasts, we're pretty much on there, so check us out there as well. And also, sorry we didn't do a show last week. I had scheduling conflicts. I have a new job that's making my schedule a little bit more complicated, but we're here to talk about everything Star Wars related now. So like usual, first topic is Mandalorian. Goldman, Lunga, I think it's been 2 weeks now. How are you guys doing? Yeah. How are you guys feeling about Star Wars and the state of the world?
Best feeling I've had about Star Wars since the original trilogy.
Wow, that's a big one. Even before the prequels, like even when the Phantom Menace trailer came out.
Yep.
Dang.
Yep.
It's nice seeing a lot of people just happy about Star Wars again. And I'm very excited for the future. This is the most excited I've been about the show. And I'm happy to be a Star Wars fan. Great time.
Yeah, I agree. I think the future is brighter than ever. I know a lot of us. It's funny. I've been reading a lot of interviews about for the documentary I'm making about Lucas on like what happened when he sold it. And I remember when it was announced that J.J. Abrams was directing, there was a Star Wars podcast guy who said this is like one of the best moments in Star Wars history. Like the feeling is just kind of insurmountable. And now I look back on that in hindsight, I'm like, okay, well, maybe we jumped the gun on it. And maybe we'll say that today, looking back in 2030 or something. But I mean, as it stands right now, we actually have content that we're happy with. I think The Mandalorian has really brought in a lot of Star Wars fans a lot of joy and really just good quality Star Wars content that makes the future seem very bright, mainly with what is in the works and what could happen down the line. So, I mean, which do you guys want to talk about first? I mean, we can talk a little bit about Chapter 13, The Jedi, but the one that came out yesterday that's been all the rave is Chapter 14, The Tragedy, which I found funny because after the one with Ahsoka last week, a lot of people kind of, I wouldn't say weren't looking forward to Chapter 14, but they were just kind of like the peak of the show has kind of already hit with the Ahsoka one.
I was expecting a letdown. Letdown is hard. Not it's a hard word, but I was expecting a dip.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, especially when no. Well, considering I really liked the Jedi, and this one I liked a lot too, but maybe a little less. So technically, I guess so. But I don't know. They're both great. And when it's funny, whenever people hear that an episode is short, they'll like be really upset, like, oh, it's not long enough. Like this episode and then Chapter 11 was also fairly short, but those 2 episodes have been great. So I'm not going to complain about episode length anymore.
Yeah, I don't feel like this episode was too short for me, if at all. I've noticed that I'm kind of the odd man out when it comes to this recent episode of the what's it called, The Tragedy.
The Tragedy.
And it's called The Tragedy because, of course, spoiler alert, Grogu gets taken away, which is very sad. For me, I like this episode in terms of story and kind of what they did. I liked seeing Boba return. I really thought the return of Boba was good. I thought Tamara Morrison did an amazing job. For me, I've said it in my review of this episode, I've said it on my Instagram. I feel like this looked like a fan film for Star Wars. It just looked very weird, and I've gotten a lot of hate about it. One guy was saying that I was cancer because I didn't say this was the greatest episode of all time. I was like, hey man, I'm just it's not me trying to be like a scholar and a film critic.
It's not like you said you hated it. You thought it was a good episode. No. It's just
yeah. It looked okay in some cases, but
I think the biggest reason why it felt like a fan film, at least for me, was because when you watch a lot of these actual fan films, they're filmed in like open areas, like a desert or in the middle of the forest or a field, and that was essentially what this episode was. So that's I get what you're saying, but I don't think the like production value made it like a fan film. If that makes sense.
I think it was the angles. That's what it was made me feel like a fan film was the angles. Fan films have a lot of those up angles, looking up at someone. Or from a certain area. I think the shot angles maybe is what gave you that feel, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was some of the shot angles. I think it was maybe the after effects that they did on it. It just seemed like something I personally would go make in my backyard with my own handheld camera. So that's just my take on it. It's not like it was a bad episode. I liked the kind of situation with Grogu of him leaving, him kind of, I guess, going to the dark side a little bit just because he killed those two stormtroopers. Personally, the one thing that I noted and I also got a little hate for is that I wanted a little bit more emotion about him leaving. I thought this could have been an episode that would have actually made people cry if you saw Din Djarin get upset about Grogu getting taken away, and the Razor Crest is destroyed. It just seemed like he kind of, I wouldn't say didn't care, but he was like, oh, well, that sucks. Anyways, just kind of went on about his day. So I wasn't.
Everything about him has been very reserved. Think about the way he reacted when the entire covert was killed. He didn't. I mean, he's not an overly emotional character. So I think it's in line with how he is.
I think he just hides his emotions behind his mask. I mean, for all we know, like I definitely believe Pedro Pascal, if he were not wearing the helmet, would deliver something that's very emotional, but. Yeah, but I agree with Lunga. The mask makes him a much more reserved character. So that's the vibe I got.
Yeah, and I agree with both of you on that. I just think that because of the connection between him and Grogu that's been building for so long, I would have liked to see something a little bit more with this, add a little bit more meat to it. But yeah, I understand I am nitpicking with that there. But what did you guys think about Boba Fett? I mean, we've been talking about him getting his own series basically all year, and now we finally get to see him kind of back in his armor, kind of doing his own thing. What did you guys think of the return officially of Boba Fett?
It was definitely entertaining because people love to say how Boba Fett's this badass, but you don't really get that in the originals. He's kind of just there. He captures Han Solo, sure, but he doesn't do anything legit badass. And then Return of the Jedi, he looks like a loser. But here, Boba Fett kicks some ass. I was surprised by how actually brutal this episode was at times. He had the that like metal stick or whatever, and he was clocking people in the face. Like that was surprising. You seen like people there's one angle where it just zoomed in on a stormtrooper's helmet, and it was like shattered. Oh, that guy's face must have been gone. So yeah, I like seeing Boba Fett. One thing though, this didn't convince me that he deserves his own series. Was it fun seeing him fight? Sure. Was it fun seeing him a badass? Sure. But I'm still not convinced that Boba Fett should have his own series. I'm not sure I would be interested in one either.
I do find that interesting because they have said that, basically the series is filming right now. So I think that your wish will go a little unfulfilled. But honestly, at the moment, I think that he's kind of redeemed himself in character-wise. I mean, as someone who did not like his character in the original trilogy, I've seen some people say that they weren't excited about him getting his own series and now kind of changes their opinion about that. Do you think, as someone who wasn't a fan of him in the original trilogy, do you think he's a little bit better of a character now?
Sure, he was more entertaining. I did like how, even though he kind of had some, like, a little bit of a code in this episode that he's going to stick with Mando and help him find the child, you still see that a little bit of that darker Boba Fett in the way he fights, just like completely brutal. He wasn't holding back. He had no problem just slamming stormtroopers in the face. And like some of the acting I think was great. Like he looked like really angry at times. I totally bought it. So I definitely thoroughly enjoyed him in this episode. And I probably will enjoy him for the rest of the season. But I don't think I would be interested in seeing him as the main character in the show.
What about you, Lunga? What'd you think about Boba Fett? Are you on board for a sequel or a series on him at all?
I'm okay. I do have some weird sounds. That's not the 3D printer. I don't know what's going on with my audio. There's some other sound coming through, and it's not.
Oh,
the
I thought
3D
that's what it
printer.
was. Yeah, but you guys don't know.
no,
Lunga's actually making Din
Yeah.
Djarin mask himself. He's going to become the Mando. Season
No,
3.
there's some other wine coming. I'm not sure where it's from, but I can't do much about it right now. But yeah, I mean, I'm okay with the Boba Fett series. I was always okay with it. My only issue is not a Boba Fett series, but what is the story going to be about? That's the most important thing for me. You know, like I said, if it's prior to Mando and it's him living with the Tusken Raiders, I'm going to be bored. You know, I need something more of substance for that. But I'm okay with it, and as far as what Goldman said about how it's like, you know, he has his code and that's okay. If we think about it, really, what we know of Boba, at least if we go by the movies, you know, people can bring up the Dark Horse comics and stuff all they want, but if we go by the movie stuff, it's not like we knew that much about him, other than he was a bounty hunter and he just did his job. Now, if you think about how bounty hunters are in general, just in cinema and in storytelling, even if you think about how the John Wick stuff is, if they're paid to do something, they'll do it. They have no qualms. They'll do what they got to do. But other than that, if they're not paid to do something, they don't get involved, or they worry about themselves, or they don't usually have to worry about too much stuff. So it's like, I heard people were saying like, well, why didn't he just kill Din Djarin for his armor too? I'm like, because that's not what he just wants his armor. He doesn't care what Din Djarin does with his life. He doesn't want his armor. But and as far as him and Code wanting to help out, it makes kind of sense, I would guess, and it gives a little more depth to the character that we didn't have.
It does.
I like that he's willing to help out. I think it's going to make the rest of the series, or at least this season, pretty interesting, because it's going to be, you know, Din Djarin with, I would assume, Cara Dune. Maybe not her, because she might just give him information on how to find Bill Burr's character Mayfield. But we know Din is going to be working with Boba and Fennec. So I'm kind of happy with that. I think basically the next episode is going to be, they're going to go to some prison, get Bill Burr's character out of there, and then right after that is the big season finale, and we get to see what happens at the end of it all. And that makes me really excited, because for me, this season has been better than season 1, and I really think there's only been one episode that I didn't like, and that was the second episode of this season. I think it was chapter 10,
10.
The one with the spiders.
Yes.
Yeah, did not like that one even remotely, but mostly, man, I mean, this season's been a hit. Every single episode has done great. Even this episode, where some parts of it I didn't like as much as others, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I mean, it still not only passes, it's a B. So I mean, I think the series is doing everything right, and I saw an article talking about how this kind of did better for Star Wars than what the sequel trilogy did back in 2015 when it started up. And I agree with that. I think this really sets a good kind of base on the future of Star Wars for the stories of our characters, and, you know, a potential Ahsoka series, a Boba Fett series that's happening, and season 3 and season 4 for this series of Mandalorian. I can't be happier than what we have right now. I mean, this, like Lunga was saying, this may be the best time to be alive for a Star Wars fan since the original trilogy, and the happiest we've been in ever. I mean, I really don't feel like, even people on the fandom menace side, even people who can't stand Disney Star Wars, I don't really feel like you have much room to stand on why you don't like the series anymore. What do you think, Goldman?
I mean, people will always find a way to complain about stuff, but I mean, when something like The Mandalorian, there's just, I feel like a lot of the complaints that people have with these episodes are rather small things. Like with the chapter 13, the Jedi, people were complaining about Ahsoka's Laku and how they were shorter than they were in Rebels. Like, if that's the biggest complaint you're going to have about an episode, I think it's a pretty good episode. And with this episode, you know, some people were saying it was like a fan film. But again, like the actual story, there's not much to complain about, at least from my perspective. And a lot of people seem to be happy. I completely agree. This might not be the happiest time I've been as a Star Wars fan, but looking forward, and definitely right now, I am definitely really excited.
Yeah, I couldn't be happier. Lunga, you got any thoughts on not only the show, where it's going, but the future of the franchise at this point? I think your mic's muted, buddy.
If he's even here.
There's so many places it can go, right? I mean, we're literally at the point where we know. I mean, I was speculating like crazy, and a lot of the stuff I speculated has actually happened, which is cool. But now it's at a point where it's like there's like a million roads, and it's like, where can this go? We have absolutely no idea. You know what I mean? Moff Gideon is still confusing to me because he wears that Vader-esque armor, and it almost seems like he could be an Inquisitor or work it, or maybe he's a Sith acolyte or something like that. But we don't know what's going on with that. We don't know the Dark Troopers. We don't know, are they all cyborg, or are they all droid, or are they cyborgs? Are there people inside of there? But baby, I was even thinking about this. Was Grogu actually maybe a dark side baby to begin with? You know, maybe he wasn't a Jedi. Maybe he was at the temple, but maybe they were keeping him there for some other reason, and they were worried about it, and that's why they were training him, because he had too much, dark side affinity, so they were trying to help him or something. But there's definitely something going on between him and Moff Gideon where they know each other. But who knows where it's going to go? But I'm excited, and that's the thing I like. When it gets to a point where I can no longer speculate, and now it's like, geez, what's going to happen? Thrawn. There's just so much that can occur here that I'm super excited, and I just can't wait to see what happens. And I'm sad that there's only going to be 2 more episodes left.
One thing I like that you touched on was the dark side nature of Grogu / Baby Yoda. This is something I noticed a little bit in the first season, because he force choked Cara Dune. That's a fairly dark side thing to do. In this season, we're really starting to see that. And if you think about it, it makes sense. I mean, it's been 20, close to 30 years since Revenge of the Sith. So Baby Yoda has probably been in a rather depressing environment since. I mean, he was saved by someone, but when we can assume that he's on the run, or was on the run with someone had him and was on the run with him at some point, and he was captured most of his life. I mean, we can assume, and it's not really until Mando Din Djarin that he has probably a good relationship with someone since the events of the prequels, and taking him away from Din Djarin makes sense that he's going to tap into his darker tendencies. That's something Ahsoka mentioned, that he sees Din Djarin as a father, and what happens when you remove a baby from their parent? Not good. So I'm very curious to see if they're going to play into that potential dark side aspect of Baby Yoda.
I would hope so, just because personally I was disappointed with how they did the dark side stuff with Ezra in Rebels, where it was like at the ending, I think of season 2 or season 3, you had that red eyes. You're like, oh, he might go down a dark path. And then like within the next 2 episodes of the next season, it was like, it was just, cool to think about. And so I would like that to be explored a little bit, maybe not with Grogu, but just in general. I feel like getting a little bit more characterization of dark side characters would be something I would be really interested in for the future of Star Wars, getting to know about the dark side a little bit more than what we already do, because it's mostly been from the point of view of the Jedi, which is fine. I mean, that's how the story's supposed to be. The good guys always win, of course, but still, I think Grogu exploring the dark side would be quite interesting to see, and learning more about his backstory. One thing that really interests me, and I kind of want to hear your guys' theories on it, is the Seeing Stone. I mean, that was a big part of Ahsoka telling him where to go, and the reason he went there, of course, was to find out who would be his Jedi Master. And I personally was hoping that we would actually see him have visions of his past and visions of his future, and maybe who to go to. Do you guys think, because I personally think that he knows who should train him, I just think that we're not going to know that answer until at least season 3 at this point, or at the very ending of season 2, like within the last 5 minutes, because of him being captured at this point. Do you guys think he knows who is supposed to train him at this point, and who do you think that is at this point?
I honestly think, and this may be a hot take, I don't think he's going to be trained. I don't think he's going to choose his. Remember, it's all about him picking his path. And there's those huge daddy moments when he's in the ship and he's talking to him. He's like, remember, when he uses the word "the nice lady," that is a dad speak. Okay, no one says "the nice lady" to a kid unless it's a dad. It is complete dad speak, and he's like telling him, like, don't you want to learn all that Jedi stuff? Don't you want to do? He's almost trying to convince himself more than him. He's like, I really don't want to part with him. And the way Grogu even looks at him, there's so much emotive in this little puppet. I think he's going to choose to stay with Din Djarin. That's what I think. I don't think he's going to want to be trained to be a Jedi. I don't think he wants to do it. I think he just wants to be who he is, and that's it.
I like that take. What do you think, Golden?
I agree. I think they might attempt at some point to try and train him. I do think he'll become stronger with the Force, but I don't think he'll be separated from Mando. I had a thought and I completely forgot it.
It's in there somewhere, Goldman. It's in there somewhere.
Well, I thought what would be two interesting routes is that if he does stay with Din Djarin for the foreseeable future, it's kind of depressing because, Din's gonna die and Baby Yoda or Grogu is still gonna live on because he's not gonna be baby no more, and
Mhm.
he lives a lot longer. Also, fun thought, which I know is completely a conspiracy theory, never gonna happen. What if in his vision he saw that Moff Gideon was supposed to be the guy to train him? That would baffle me beyond relief if
Do
he
we?
was like, you know what, fuck it, I'll go for the dark side.
I don't think that Moff Gideon is force sensitive, but I could be wrong. But my train of thought I remembered. So with Mando, like I was on the beginning of the episode, I'd like a point that Longest said, where he was like in the beginning of this episode, the tragedy. He was kind of talking to Baby Yoda. He's like, "I'm gonna have to give you up. You're gonna have to go away with him." It did seem like he was convincing himself, like this is something he has to do, and he definitely doesn't want. And then this was something we talked about earlier when like Baby Yoda was gone. He was definitely like destroyed internally, and I think the mask was a complete cover up. And I think I just can't see a path for the series where Baby Yoda separates from Din Djarin for a significant amount of time. But with a Jedi, he clearly either saw someone or communicated with someone. That's not going to be a plot thread that's going to be dropped. So we're going to see a Jedi. I'm not sure who it could be. I mean, Ezra, Luke, who else is there?
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the really interesting things I was speculating on is, in Return of the Jedi, Yoda says to Luke, "You're the last of the Jedi." So I feel like if in the canon if they bring back another person that survived throughout the events of the original trilogy but didn't help out, I think it would take away a little bit from Return of the Jedi. So do I want to see Luke? I think that would be cool. I could see something happening where like maybe Luke shows up or Ezra shows up and is like, yeah, we can't train him. He needs to be with you, or else he will end up going down a dark path. So I definitely that's what I think is gonna happen.
I am seriously like before here at the beginning of season 1 when we saw Boba, what we now know as Boba over Fennec Shen. I'm like, no, it's not Boba. There's no way. They're trying to do their own I'm thinking about how creative people are. They want to separate from the old stuff and not hang on other characters. I completely underestimated the fandom of Favreau and Filoni. I know how big fans they are, but they want to tie this in. They want to bring all this old stuff back in as much as possible. So where at one point I would have said Luke Skywalker, no way. There's no way they're gonna bring.
Yeah,
I can see it happening now. I can see it happening. This is a way for them to bring, especially with how upset people were with how Luke's treatment was. I could see him bring it back. Maybe Sebastian Stan. Maybe it's something else. I would love Sebastian Stan. I think he's perfect. That'd be awesome. But
Yeah, everyone's been saying he should be
maybe
the guy.
It's just voice.
Do it.
Maybe you bring Mark Hamill and just do a voiceover. Maybe it's just his voice speaking to him over the Force. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the reason why he wasn't part of Luke's academy later is because he makes the choice of not to be trained. That he wants to stay with Din Djarin. You know what I mean? So that's what I think. I think we could see Luke Skywalker or hear him at least at some point.
Yeah, I think we're gonna get something big when it comes to the Jedi at the end of this season. I really kind of hope that they twist things up and Grogu does have a little bit of the dark side to him, at least in season 3. And what brings him back is that little knob that he always plays with that Din Djarin has at the moment. Probably be a little similar to the Rebels, like I said, I didn't really like, but I think it'd be different if it's a Grogu since he's a baby. But there's a lot of potential, and when it comes to like what this is setting up, Ahsoka was talking about, she's looking for Thrawn, she's looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn, and Dave Filoni has hinted that this series, like where we're at right now, might actually be taking place before the ending of Rebels, where we see her kind of depart with Sabine to look for Ezra. So this could be setting something up big with Grand Admiral Thrawn, and he could be the one who is in charge of Moff Gideon. There's so many things that are kind of coming together, pieces of the puzzle, but we really only have the outline of the puzzle. Like the middle of it, the big meat of it all is completely empty to us, and I don't think we're going to get a lot of those answers until season 3. Giancarlo Esposito, who plays Moff Gideon, has been teasing at. And he also teased, though, at the beginning, or actually before this season of season 2, he said that we're going to get a lot of one-on-one time with him and Grogu. So I think we're going to see a lot in this next episode, or maybe in the final episode of season 2, of what's going to happen with potentially Grogu if he stays captured, or more about his history and what Moff Gideon's plans are in general. And I think that's going to be a big cliffhanger for all of us, because we're going to realize more on the evil aspects of him. Because even someone like Boba Fett, when he saw the ship, he was like, the Empire's back. And that was a big deal to him. I don't think it was a big deal to a lot of us, but I just think that means there's some moves that are taking place that even someone like him and Finnick are kind of like surprised by. So it's a very, very unique way on actually taking the story. And I can't stress enough how much better this season is compared to season 1, because season 1 was very isolated. Season 1 was like, okay, it's a simple story, it's fun, but we're keeping things between. It's just these characters we don't know. It's new stories, new characters, and very simple fun. This is completely different. This is like changing everything for me. And they said Game of Thrones style, and I think they're hitting that pretty well. So, any final thoughts on chapter 13, chapter 14, and where this show is going at this point?
I don't think that this might be a hot take. I don't think Thrawn is going to show up in this show. Maybe later on. I do think the Thrawn reveal was some like backdoor pilot for this Rebel sequel show, because I do believe that's going to happen. They're going to conclude Ezra's story in some way, and I don't think the Mandalorian is the right place to do that. I do think it would have to be something focused on Sabine and Ahsoka. And I like you brought up the point with the Rebels epilogue, because we don't really know when it is. I always thought it was like sometime right after Return of the Jedi, but yeah, it could be much later on. And I could totally see it where this happens first, chapter 13. She asks the magistrate, where is Thrawn? She gets that information. And then after she gets the information, she then goes to Sabine and is like, okay, I have some info. Let's go together. And then that's what we see in the Rebels epilogue. I totally see that happening. And I do think there's much bigger plans for Thrawn. One thing interesting about Thrawn is with the canon, they've already done a new Thrawn trilogy about him. And now they're making another Thrawn trilogy about him. The first book came out, and then this new trilogy is really focusing on the Chiss. And I think that might be set up later on for like the hardcore fans, that we're going to really explore like the unknown regions, because the Chiss are from the unknown regions. And it kind of makes sense because we can't have a big war in the galaxy between episodes 6 and 7. So if you have a conflict brewing in the unknown regions, it could be with the Chiss, and that's where Ahsoka and Ezra go. And maybe that's why Luke isn't really around. Maybe he's with them. We'll see. But I definitely think there are a lot of plans for Thrawn. They might even be doing some sort of reboot of the original Thrawn trilogy that came out in the 90s. And obviously not the same story, but something similar where Thrawn is the head of this big Imperial remnant. I could see something like that happening.
Yeah. I think the what's the next one's going to be written by Rick Famuyiwa, so he's directing that one, I would assume, as well. And it's funny because Mayfield, Bill Burr, is coming back in that one. Do you guys think Jon Favreau is directing the last episode? Because looking at the directors list, I think that's the route it's going to go, because the directors that have returned are Bryce Dallas Howard. She did the Harris episode with Bo-Katan. Then we have Peyton Reed. Which one did he direct? He directed chapter, the one with the spiders. Dave Filoni did The Jedi. Who else was there? The day was Robert Rodriguez. Am I missing anybody?
Carl Weathers directed chapter
his own
12?
episode.
Yeah.
And
then Favreau did the first one.
And so you think Favreau is going to do the last one as well? We're going to have a surprise director. Is it going to say at the end, directed by Rian Johnson or directed by George Lucas? Can you imagine?
I would love Rian Johnson to come back. If they did George Lucas, though, I think the possibility of that happening is like 0. But that would be like crazy. The behind the scenes stuff of George Lucas directing Star Wars again, I would pay to watch that. I would pay to watch that.
I'd pay top dollar just to see that man get behind set and talk shit or something like that. All right, I'm gonna show you guys how I would do it. Like get into a little mojo.
Step back. Hold my beer, guys. Hold my beer.
Yeah, hold my beer.
And this time it's this time it's him and
not faster and more intense. No, Dave Filoni.
This time it's Dave Filoni, and he's gonna be like, "It's gonna be great. That's gonna be great." It's them two. This time
oh man, I'm looking forward to it. I like Victor's take on it. It's going to be directed by the Goldman. You guys thought we just had cameos. No, they brought us in because Goldman himself wanted to direct a whole the final episode, and None of us know exactly how it's going to go. But sticking to live action, there's a new report from this guy, Daniel Richmond, who we've talked about before, and I'll talk about him a little bit more before we end this segment on this specific topic. But he says that Rosario Dawson, the actress who plays Ahsoka, has signed on for 3 Star Wars films. Now, coincidentally, there are 3 Star Wars films that are coming in the years of 2023, 2025, and 2027. So, Lunga, I'm going to give you this first question. Do you think we're going to see Ahsoka in 3 Star Wars films?
In 3 films? That's a lot.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I don't know. I still really feel that are lining her up more for this Disney Plus live action series kind of stuff. Maybe she'll make an appearances. I just don't see her being a main player in a new trilogy. Unless, hear me out, guys. Maybe they're doing this whole Thrawn ascendancy or a version of Heir to the Empire or not Heir to the Empire because we had a sequel trilogy, but something with Thrawn or Thrawn ascendancy, having a trilogy with that, and she's a major player in that.
Yeah, that's not a bad route to take it. I mean, if she's, I would imagine if they're doing a sequel to Rebels in an animated format, she is going to be one of the main characters in that, and she's going to find Ezra, and that's going to lead to answers with Thrawn. But will they take the Thrawn route of it into live action with Ahsoka? I mean, it's a whole nother route to go, and I think I don't know if so. Maybe Ahsoka is marketable enough to get her own trilogy. Golden, what do you think? You think she's not only going to be in 3 films, but do you think she's going to be the main character of 3 films?
I'm still not sold on the idea that these films will take place between episodes 6 and 7. I think maybe that's just me wanting them to be in the past, but if they do, I could see Ahsoka being involved, potentially being a big role. I don't think she can be the main character because if it does take place after this Mandalorian episode, I mean, she's in her mid-40s, the character, and I feel like with the Star Wars movie, you need to have a main character that is somewhat younger. I mean, all the films have had a main character, whether it be Anakin, Luke, or Rey, or I guess Jin and Han, that are relatively young people. So I don't think they would have a main character in a Star Wars movie be in their mid-40s. But she could serve as some mentor role to some new character that's the protagonist of the trilogy. I don't think the main character of these films, if it's going to be between episode 6 and 7, and it carries on Thrawn's story or Ezra's story, I think the main character has to be someone new because we need that character that doesn't know about Ezra and Thrawn or Ahsoka, because it would be kind of serving as like the audience members who hasn't watched any of the animated stuff. Because if you're going to do a movie trilogy about Ahsoka, Ezra, and Thrawn, then you basically have to watch Rebels, and you don't want to create movies that you need to watch something else to understand. So if you have this new character and then they meet Ezra in like the second film and he explains a little bit about the backstory, then that could work. I could totally see them doing a what if the rumors about rebooting the sequel trilogy are true, but they're not retconning it, they're just making the new trilogy take place shortly after Return of the Jedi with new characters. Maybe Doomcopper's right this whole time.
Oh no.
Goldman, don't take us on that road. Don't take us down that road.
That's a bad thought.
Listen, we just got faith that Filoni and Favreau are like trying to make stuff that all Star Wars fans can like. Let's not go back down that road, please.
Yeah, but I don't think, to answer your question, I don't think Ahsoka would be the main character in these movies, but I could totally see her playing an important character.
Yeah, I would imagine that, like, if the big thing with these next 3 films that are 2023, 2025, and 2027 is we really don't know anything about them, where in the timeline they take place or anything like that. But that doesn't mean those are the only 3 films that are coming. And there could be potential spin-off films. We've been told a few times this past year or so that live action Thrawn and Ezra are supposed to happen. Now, whether that's before the Rebels sequel happens or after, like where that lines up, I mean, there's so many different possibilities with all of this. So maybe she would appear in that. So I would imagine that if it's 3 films, I would imagine that some of them are going to be just mostly spin-off films. And also, we don't know if she might show up in one of them, but she may not show up in all 3 of them. And I'm not entirely sure if I believe the news from this Dana Richmond guy anymore. And it's not because I don't think he's credible, But man, he's made a lot of claims in the past few months that are not getting outrageous, but they're getting up there. I mean, one of them was that Mace Windu's getting his own series. Force Unleashed 3 is being made by EA. A Darth Bane is going to be in a lot of future shows, getting his own project. So maybe he's right on all of these, or maybe he's right on just a few, but he's got a lot of scoops right now that we need to kind of wait and see them play out before we have a kind of fully formed opinion on him right now and kind of validate his credibility.
I mean, you want me to be honest with you?
Go ahead.
I think it's all a lot of whiteboard stuff. Someone probably showed them some kind of whiteboard and the ideas that they're tossing around, and that's what's being reported. And we all know whiteboard stuff is literally like 70% of that gets tossed. That that's how it works.
So, are you telling me the whiteboard for the High Republic showing diversity and dinosaurs is being tossed now, Lunga? You don't remember that controversy where everybody was like, "Oh my God, how dare they have diversity in Star Wars?"
Dinosaurs.
Oh no, but there was a worse sin than diversity. Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs in Star Wars, not my Star Wars.
Now, one thing about that, I love how they said, I think it said like had an actual ending, and people thought that was like taking shots at the sequels. That was funny.
Yeah,
I just think they meant no open-ended questions at the end of the High Republic stuff. But I mean, since we're on the topic though, the next bit of news for the Star Wars show world is that there are 3 animated series in the works, and one of them is going to be High Republic. And they did add that there is small talk, nothing. Like the scoop is that one of the animated series is going to be High Republic, but the whispers and small talk is that there also might be a show of the High Republic in live action. So Goldman, I'm going to give you this first question. Should the High Republic go live action or animated?
I think animated, definitely. If you do a live action show, you're somewhat limited as to what you can do. If you look at something like The Mandalorian, as amazing as it is, it's not grand in scale. But with an animated show like Clone Wars, you can have big battles every episode if you really wanted to. And something like the High Republic that makes someone like me excited is seeing a lot of Jedi versus this weird alien species. It's not the Sith, but it's still conceptually really cool in my opinion. And just seeing a lot of Jedi like big battles or something, not like big wars, but I want to see battles. I want to see fights in the stars in Star Wars. And with an animated show like the High Republic, I think you can do that more effectively than a live action show. And I think something more animated, you can get into a lot more weird stuff. Like a lot of the Clone Wars did some really interesting lore stuff with like those Yoda episodes at the end of season 6. And something like the High Republic, I want them to explore a lot of new things. And I feel like they would be more tempted to do that in an animated show than a live action one. So yeah, I really hope this is an animated show, and I hope it's true, because this is what I've been wanting. I want a new story with new characters. The only familiar character would be Yoda, and I'm not even sure if he'd play a big role. New story, and this makes me so excited. So yeah, I hope it's animated.
What do you think, Lunga? Do you think it should be a live action or animated High Republic series?
What happened to we're not making it? This is just books, guys. We're not.
That's the first thing that came to my mind.
No plans. Yeah, it was all a lie. I knew it was. To be honest with you, just from the way everything we've seen with it being concept art and the way they're talking about how there's books for the kids as well mixed in there, I almost feel like this is custom made for an animated show. I mean, I think it's cool. It would be cool to see. I like live action everything. Okay, if it's animated, I'd love to see it turn into live action if possible. You know what I mean? But I think this is kind of custom made for an animated show. It has that feel of a different era of Rebels and Clone Wars. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree, and I think that this could be the modern day Clone Wars. I mean, Clone Wars did so much justice for the prequel trilogy and really brought the characters of Anakin, Obi-Wan, and really made Ahsoka who she is. I think this is the opportunity to do the same thing, but for High Republic, and do it before we actually get a potential movie, a live action series, and I guess animated show. The books would help the animated show, but animated show would be like modern day Clone Wars in terms of we have the Jedi at the height of their power. There's not a definitive end on what's going to happen. We don't know what brings the end to the High Republic. We don't really know what it's like during this time because it's 400 years before the Phantom Menace. the Jedi are kind of doing their own thing, and they're supposed to be like old Western cowboys. They're still exploring the galaxy and learning things about the Force. There's a lot of potential with the High Republic, and I think giving a show for this era is a good idea by Disney and Lucasfilm. And I also think that personally, I would prefer a little bit more of the animated stuff just because it would be similar to Clone Wars, but live action would be something that I think is also really great because, I mean, imagine seeing all these lightsabers and all these characters on live action big screen one day. I mean, maybe one day we actually get a movie out of this. Lunga, I'll ask you this. Do you think that the High Republic shows, live action or animated, set up a potential movie or trilogy? You think we're just not only going to do a show for the High Republic, we're actually going to do a movie or a trilogy one day?
Well, you kind of springboard of what I said. I love to see animated stuff also made into live action. So yeah, I'm on board for that. I just hope if they do. The only thing I'm worried about is while I love the Clone Wars, it obviously had a kid feel. I mean, even though those violence in it, those other stuff, but you could tell it was made for kids. So for me, if it starts out that way, I don't know how enjoyable it'll be unless they change it. Make it more mature if they make it live action, maybe. I do want to mention when you go back to that last graphic with the models they made for the concept art. I just realized the one with the hair looks legitimately like they just literally ripped her from the character in the last season 7 of Clone Wars. The one of the sisters. It's like literally her.
Oh, the second from the right.
Yeah.
Huh?
Oh yeah, I didn't notice that. I feel bad. That is the only Clone Wars arc I have not watched. I think I watched. No, I know season 7 is amazing because of the Mandalorian or the Mandalore arc, season Mandalore.
Right.
Dude, those first 2 arcs, Bad Batch and the 2 sisters, I fell asleep. Like I tried to binge it all in one day, and I got through the first episode of the sister arc, and then I was out. I was out like a light. I did not remotely care about them at all. So maybe you're right.
Even the way they drew her face, the smirk, it looks just like her. I'm like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, I'd be on board for. I'm a Star Wars nut, dude. I'll watch anything you throw at me. I might end up saying I hate this. This is trash, but I'll watch it. Like I said, if you want my perfect opinion, I would rather this be live action. But I think the way they're designed it's better off as animated, and I don't know if it should be live action.
Goldman, go ahead. Yeah, you wanted this to be a movie one day?
Part of me actually says no. I mean, I feel like at least with this conflict that's brewing, I mean, it's going to start with a book. And then I feel like an animated show is better to build off from that book. I feel like if you do a movie, assuming that it's going to start with an animated series, you're going to have to do a lot more explaining and backstory and stuff. I mean, would I like it? Sure. Would I watch it? Yes. I don't think that's going to happen unless it's super successful. Then probably, I don't know. If I had to bet money, I don't think the High Republic would become a movie at some point. But I actually have a question for the both of you. Do either of you plan on reading any of the High Republic books?
Of course. I've been listening to the audio book for Thrawn Ascendancy, and it took a while to get interesting, but I'm liking it now. I would rather read things and listen to them. I do plan on reading all of the books, and because of my Instagram, I probably could, maybe not. I could probably ask for like early copies of it and get them. I have some friends who already have a few of the books for the High Republic. You just can't like talk about any of it until the release embargo lifts. So that's something I'm interested in. I definitely would like to get my hands on it, but I don't know. The comic books I won't probably read, like the kid ones. Like Lunga was kind of talking about how if it's more kid orientated, I wouldn't be that interested in it, and I have the same feel on that. I think the first eight chapters of Light of the Jedi, which is the first one that comes out in January, is already out there, so we can all read that if we wanted to. But Lunga,
I read the first couple chapters, because they put up, I think it was the one chapter. They put up the first chapter.
Yeah, I read that too.
Then they put more. I read the first chapter one. It was interesting, but I gotta tell you, even though it seems like it was very exciting. If people haven't read it, I don't want to spoil that part. But even though it seems like it's very exciting, it seemed a very slow way to start a book to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's nothing to really spoil either, because like whatever happened in that chapter, I mean, I guess spoiler alert if you really care, all that happened was there's a lady who has a ship that transports people, like basically immigrants across the galaxy.
Yeah.
She was taking them to the New Republic, and then basically the ship crashed. Like there was a big accident, and that kind of is what they say sets the entire story and conflict up for the rest of the High Republic series, where she crashes into something, like it's something in hyperspace. So
yeah, it's supposed to be some weird thing in hyperspace that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So it's going to be some kind of the Nile, probably like, or find a way to
that's
intercept
the main
hyperspace
villain.
lanes and
Well, I hope. What I hope this books. Well, it's a multimedia project, right? What I hope it's kind of like is the old New Jedi Order books. For those of you who don't know, it's like a 19-book story that took place in the expanded universe after Return of the Jedi. I would love that if it was just not like a trilogy, but like a legit saga of just book after book after book after book. And you can also do it in different mediums too. Like the main books could focus on like the main players in the story, but there's like the YA novels could focus on different people. Then like the actual junior books can focus on like kids doing something, and then the comics. So I really hope it's like that. And then part of me would almost somewhat prefer that than an animated series, because I feel like if there's an animated series, then they're not going to do that much with the books. But I don't know. I would be happy with both if it's just a really good long story.
I think it will be. And one thing I think would be kind of interesting is exploring the Sith during this time period. That Daniel Richmond guy that I talked about earlier did say that Darth Bane was going to show up in multiple projects, like when it comes to the shows in the future. This could be kind of the era he was alive during. It might be a little late.
He was 1,000 years. He was 1,000 years before the prequels.
In canon though. I mean, not in the expanded universe. I mean, canon wise though, is that still the case? Yoda knew about him, and the only thing we really know about him in the canon right now is Yoda in season 6 of the Clone Wars, the lost episodes, where he says that he created Rule 2.
Because they haven't heard from the Sith in 1,000 years, according to prequels.
Okay. Well, maybe
Basically, that's when Bane started his Rule of 2. That's when he went to hiding with his Rule of 2. And that was 1,000 years per the prequels.
Well, then maybe we can get his ghost or something like that in this. I just think it would be a cool tie, and I would like to explore the Sith and find out about them during the High Republic era, even if it's not the Jedi, like actually running into them. I mean, it could be like one or two Padawans who run into the Sith planet, and the Sith come out and like, oh, hey, yeah, we're gonna kill you because you can't know that we're still around. That would be kind of cool, but also might be too dark for maybe a book, or maybe too big of a deal for just a book.
The books are pretty mature. If you read a lot of the adult novels, they're pretty dark books, some of them. The show, maybe if they do the show, it probably won't be as dark, but the books do get pretty dark at times.
Yeah, what was the I know it's Legends now, but what are the one? There's like two like horror style Star Wars books. Red Harvest is one of them.
I think one is Death Troopers, where there's like actual zombies.
Yes,
that was weird,
yes.
Yeah,
it is.
I don't know anything about the book.
But then again, Han Solo fought the Otter Queen, so
never know. I don't know. I'm interested in High Republic. I don't know how well it's going to be received. I don't think a movie would be the best idea, at least until like 5 to 6 years after the books have released, and maybe even more because of the shows and the live action stuff they got going on now. But it's nice to have a new era in Star Wars to explore. We're right now, it seems like when it comes to live action shows like The Mandalorian, we are committing to, or even the Rebel sequel that's animated, we're committing to the timeline between episodes 6 and 7, that 30-year gap. And with the High Republic, we're now committing to the timeline before all of
way before.
Yeah, so it's nice to have like these two completely different options, because I am so tired of that timeline between episodes 3 and 4, between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. I mean, they've just milked that dry, and there's nothing even after episode 9, which is okay, but there's barely anything before the Phantom Menace. So now that we're finally getting that, I think I can die happy and be content with the Star Wars content. So any final thoughts on the High Republic? What you guys want to see in terms of, you want to see some Sith? Do you want to see more about the Jedi, more about the Force? Any final thoughts on that?
No Sith. Just a story. I want it to be really large in scope, have different characters, different parts of the galaxy doing different stuff. Yeah, that's the one thing I'd say, scope.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, I guess I have to read the books. That's why it gets real difficult for me to say, do I want to see live action High Republic when I don't know anything about it, really. So I have to really read it to find out. But if they go the way I think, then probably not. And as far as this, like the Sith, you mentioned the Sith. This is why I hate Darth Bane. Everyone's like thinks I'm like heretical for saying I hate Darth Bane, but the Darth Bane and Lucas come up with the whole rule of two, just killed fantastic villainy and antagonists because they're not around for 1,000 years, and if it's only two of them hiding for 1,000 years, you know what I mean? And it's like, all right.
No, I actually agree with you. I remember when like Phantom Menace is what set that up, as Yoda and Mace Windu's line of like always two there are, no more, no less. And I think it's because Lucas wants to make it where like they're very selfish, and I kind of like the idea of it, but I agree that it takes away a lot of the villainy for the Sith, because I like the Star Wars: The Old Republic trailers of like all the Sith and Jedi going at it. I would love to see that. I would just love to learn more about the Sith, and you can't really do that with just two. And also it does kind of take away the intrigue of the dark side when there's just two of them out there, and it's like, well, how do you find them? I'm like, they're literally hiding from the Jedi for thousands and thousands of years. It does take away the meaningfulness of them, in my opinion. But I mean, they won in the end, did they not? The Jedi are no more, and neither are the Sith. Until Rey came along, she's kind of like both of them, but whatever. Last topic of the day, though, is our boy, our Lord and Savior, father of the franchise, Star Wars creator George Lucas, who in a interview, in a new interview for that book, the new Star Wars book called Star Wars Archives, that's between 1999 and 2005 for the prequels, he actually said why he decided to not make the sequel trilogy himself. Here is what he said. At the time, I was starting the next trilogy. I talked to the actors, and I was starting to gear up. I was also about to have a daughter with my wife. It takes 10 years to make the trilogy. Episodes 1 through 3 took from 1995 to 2005, and in 2012, I was 69. Nice. So the question was, am I going to keep doing this for the rest of my life? Do I want to go through this again? Finally, I decided I'd rather raise my daughter and enjoy my life for a little while. I could have not sold Lucasfilm and gotten someone to run the productions, but that isn't retiring. It was the right thing to do. I thought I was going to have a little bit more say about the next three because I already started them, but they decided they wanted to do something else. They don't always, things don't always work out the way you want it. Life is like that. Lunga, I'll give this first question to you. You think Lucas made the right choice here after what he just said here?
Man, listen, he has nostalgia. He loves his creation. He struggles with it, saying, I still want to be able to do this, but it's like, but do I really? That's what he's saying every time. But do I really? It's like it's a nice idea. It's a thought, and a lot of times it becomes a seller's remorse. You know what I mean? It's like, I could have done a lot better than that. They messed it all up. But dude, he was done. I think the passion for loving it and being its creator was there, but the passion for making new stories wasn't. Mm-hmm. And I think it's better that he just didn't do it at this point. Just let it go.
Yeah.
What do you think, Goldman?
I would agree. And I'm not saying this because I'm someone who likes sequels. Moving my opinions of the sequels aside, I don't think you should be making movies unless you're 100% passionate about it. And George Lucas is right. He said he's having a daughter. That family should be the most important thing to him, and raising his daughter should be the most important thing to him. And creating a whole trilogy of films, again, that takes 10 years, at least if he does it the same way as the prequels. That's a lot of time, and he's an older man. If I was him, I would just retire. So I don't blame him, and I don't think it would be a good idea if he made the films and he wasn't 100% committed to it like he was with the prequels.
Yeah, that family is kind of, or his family in general, is what have kept him from Star Wars and filmmaking for so long. And as a whole, I mean, he left filmmaking in what was it, 1983. Left it for 22 years, directing at least, because he stopped in 77. He stopped directing for so long, and he retired after Return of the Jedi came out, solely to raise his first daughter. I think it was Katie. And he raised her, and once his children were kind of at an age where he didn't really need to be there 24/7, he wanted to make the prequels. And now it seems like he sold Star Wars largely to avoid the $500 million tax on the deal. But, to raise his next daughter, Everest, I think is her name, who, she's young, kind of 69 is a little old to have a kid. I don't know about all that, but I'm happy for the man, and he made it. I think in the end, he did make a good choice for himself. I'm sure a lot of Star Wars fans are going to be like, well, if it was up to me, I wish he didn't have a family at all, and he only worked on Star Wars the day he died and everything. But that seems to be what Lucas wanted to avoid. The author for Skywalking, a guy named Dale Pollock, who wrote the biography on Lucas, said that Star Wars to him was kind of like a prison in a way, and he couldn't really escape it. And this was his get out of jail free card. And I do think it's interesting that he said it would have taken him 10 years to make the sequel trilogy if he had done it, and it took the actual sequel trilogy less than 5. I mean, they came out in 2015, ended in 2019. If we count production,
I mean, they started production,
but that was the mistake.
But even with production too, though, I mean, they started in arguably 2013 at the earliest. I mean, 2012 they got the company in October. They did not start anything in October. Lucas sold them the sequel outlines. They didn't even use that. So I mean, at the earliest, they started in 2013, and they wrapped in 2019. And even then, that's kind of like a up in the air on the actual ending of it, because they probably finished the story and filming a few months before they actually released it. So I mean, just saying, it took them a shorter time than Lucas did. Basically, a whole 3 years and a whole movie that he would have done. Lucas is very different on his approach to production than I guess Disney and Lucasfilm is today. But what do you guys think about the idea of him keeping the company but having someone else do the production? Like, let's be completely honest with ourselves here. With Lucas selling Lucasfilm or not, Kathleen Kennedy would have been the chairman for Lucasfilm and the president for Lucasfilm, and would have been in charge of production for these films. Do you think the story for the sequels would have been vastly different than what we got? Do you think the reception of it, just the entire story of the sequels, in terms of audience and like the story of we, the audience, looking at it, do you think that would have been different with Lucas keeping Lucasfilm but having Kathleen Kennedy in charge of production?
I think the reaction would still be largely negative. I mean, I think that's just the nature of these films. People are more likely to dislike the new ones, and then as time comes on, people will appreciate them. But I think the story would have been radically different. There is no way George Lucas would have hired someone like J.J. Abrams to write any of the movies. Maybe direct, but definitely not write. Because he said to himself, like, the Force Awakens was a lot more of like a nostalgic film, and he doesn't want to do that. So yeah, the films, I believe, would have been vastly different. I still think people underestimate how similar The Force Awakens was to what he would have done with his Episode 7, but the whole trilogy as a whole, I think, would be very different.
Well, I thanks for the super chat. Fofo says, but Mike Zero said that he just destroyed Kathleen Kennedy and is retaking the franchise. It is crazy how some people, I don't know if they're in denial of it or not, but don't understand, Lucas and Kathleen Kennedy are really good friends. He is probably closer to Kathleen Kennedy than he is to Dave Filoni, a lot closer than he is to her than Jon Favreau. So, I mean, he's the whole reason Kathleen Kennedy was in charge. And when Goldman, when you were talking about him not bringing in J.J. Abrams to write and direct, you're absolutely right. And believe it or not, before he sold Lucasfilm to Disney, he was working on his sequel trilogy. He brought Kathleen Kennedy in to produce those movies, and he hired a guy named Michael Arden to write the script for those films. And the script that Michael Arden wrote did not, go all that well for Disney's sakes. He was still on the movie after they sold the company, and you even look at the ending credits of The Force Awakens, it says written by Michael Arden, J.J. Abrams, and Lawrence Kasdan. So Lucas was getting geared up to do that, and Michael Arden was writing the script. So, I mean, he was going to do things differently from the start. I think Lawrence Kasdan actually came in as a consultant as well for the sequel trilogy before he sold it to Disney. So things would have been different from the start. How different, though, we won't know. I mean, if we just go off what he said in the same book, I guess a few years ago, or even recently, is that Darth Maul would have been a Godfather and the crime lords and all that. Leia would have been the chosen one. A lot of weird McClunky in that, if you will. What do you think, Lunga? What do you think about how different the story would have been if Lucas would have committed to
I
all
think
this?
it I mean it would have been different. It would have been what we heard him saying, basically talking. But then again, we don't even know because we've heard so many different things. First, we hear about him talking about how it's going to be the dive into the wills in this microbiotic universe, and then we start hearing this thing about Maul and his apprentice. Taking it's like how many ideas does the man have? He's going to pack into one trilogy. I don't think it's all going to work. But yeah, I think it would. I do think it would have been vastly different. And like the point I made about how he doesn't have the passion to make them or the storytelling. But if he just had Kasdan and had the writer you were talking about and Kathleen Kennedy producing, he could just play that consultant where he could veto or add things where he's not actively doing the storytelling. He's just guiding, which he, and I think when we talk about that whole thing with Eisner's book, or not Eisner, Iger's book, and everything, I think he thought he might have that same consideration with this. That's probably what happened. He's like, this is what we're planning. I mean, you guys want to do the same thing? I mean, it's still your product. You guys can make what you want, but let me know. And so I think that's what happened. But he wanted to do that, and that's how it worked out. But I think it would have been really different from what we got. I know we had the writing credits in their stuff, but I think it would have been completely different.
Well, you make a good point too about him saying that he thought he was going to have like he gave them the outlines, and he said in this interview, he said, I thought I was going to have a little bit more say about the next three because I already started them, but they decided they wanted to do something else. And there's a little bit more of a story to that, which is a conversation for another day. But yeah, he truly thought when he sold the franchise that they were going to use those outlines that he handed them. And I think that would have also changed things differently. It's kind of amazing in Star Wars. I think it's one of those few franchises and stories that there's so many missed opportunities, so many alternate realities and universes that we have of what if someone else directed the sequels? What if someone else directed the prequels? What if Lucas had kept the rights to the Star Wars franchise? What if he had sold it, but Disney used his outlines? What if Colin Trevorrow had stayed on for episode 9? I mean, there's just so many different things. And I think that's what makes the franchise pretty unique and great. But, we're going to wrap up the show in a minute. The next show should be next week about the chapter 15 of The Mandalorian. You guys got any predictions for that? I personally will give my prediction of that. Rick Famuyiwa is going to be writing it, so he'll also be directing it, and it's going to be similar to the one he directed in season 1, chapter 6, where I think it was called The Prison or something like that, where they broke out that one person and he left Bill Burr's character, which I'm also very excited to see return. My prediction is basically the next chapter, chapter 15, they're going to break out Bill Burr, and then chapter 16, season finale, they're going to go try to save Grogu. What's your guys' predictions?
I think this will be the first episode in the whole series that we don't see Baby Yoda. Part of me would kind of like that. I don't know, just really focusing on Mando. But there's not that much to predict. I mean, we'll probably see Bill Burr's characters. I hope we see the other two characters, the Twi'lek chick and the Devaronian, because they're technically with him, at least going by the end of The Prisoner, chapter 6. So I'd like to see them too. But yeah, my prediction is that we won't see Baby Yoda this episode.
This next episode is definitely a heist. It's going to be a replay. Everyone was talking about to worry about a filler episode or this. That's what this one's going to be. This one's going to be a completely filler episode, breaking Bill Burr out, and it's going to be a lot like that episode we saw that Bill Burr was in, where they're breaking him out of the ship. It's going to be something similar to that effect, the heist kind of thing or whatever. But so they're going to be breaking him out, and that's going to be the whole process of this video. And yeah, Blowman's right. Well, this is going to be the first episode we're not going to see Baby Yoda in there.
I think that'll add a unique dynamic to the show. I mean, I feel like some people will complain, but maybe some people will say that we're not missing anything really. Like it's not going to be that big of a deal. I did forget since I didn't do Chatooine last week. I asked people to put some questions in the community tab for us, and I would answer like the top few. So we have like maybe 3 or 4 questions to answer. One of them is who would you cast as Thrawn in the live action series? I'm curious what you guys think about that, because a lot of people have said Benedict Cumberbatch, and I don't want that because I don't like big celebrities like that in my Star Wars films or just in general. But I can't think of anyone else to cast as a Thrawn actor. So who do you guys think should be live action Thrawn?
Lars Mikkelsen. He did the voice for him in Rebels, and he does look like him.
I would like that.
Yeah.
I'm not really big with like actors. I don't really like care too much. I mean, if they cast Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka, they did a good job with that. I think they'll do a good job of the casting. But yeah, a specific person, I don't know many actors. So yeah, I did have Benedict Cumberbatch in mind. But I think I'd prefer Lars Mikkelsen because I really do like that voice of his in Rebels. So yeah.
Yeah, he did a really good job.
And can we mention also that they Rosario Dawson, she exceeded my expectations. I gotta be honest with you. I was unsure about her because she kind of plays the same kind of character in everything she's in for a long time. She's always kind of like that reluctant woman that's drawn into things, and she doesn't want to deal with this. She's like kind of like that. Everything she's been in. I was kind of worried. I'm like, well, how well is she gonna act? Dude, she knocked it out the park. And not only she knocked it out the park, I think she seriously watched a lot of those Clone Wars episodes to study this character, to get her movements right, her emotions right, her facial expressions right. Yeah, she really wanted to do this, and I think she did a spectacular job as Ahsoka.
Yeah, I agree. I really liked her performance. My only critique at the beginning was just I didn't like her voice, and that's not a Rosario Dawson thing. That's just I'm so used to Ashley being the voice actress for Ahsoka. But yeah, movement wise, the way her character just basically acted. I mean, she felt very much like Ahsoka from the Clone Wars, and like Ahsoka from Rebels, and yeah. I like that aspect about her.
Also, Fofo in the comment is right. Lars Mikkelsen also was in Sherlock. If you guys want to see what he acts like, watch the BBC Sherlock with Benedict Cumberbatch. He plays the Charles Augustus Magnuson in there, and he did great in there. And no, Hannibal cannot be Thrawn because Hannibal is his brother, Mads Mikkelsen, who's already Galen herself. So no, he can't be Thrawn.
Yeah. Did not know that.
Galen Erso, that was Mads Mikkelsen. That's his brother.
Oh yeah, okay. I remember him. The next, I think we have 2 or 3 more questions from this that were good. Zach Bridge asked, "Do you know what jizz is in the world of Star Wars?"
Do I want to know?
I don't know.
That's the question.
It's the weirdest question I've ever heard.
I actually think it's called the Force. That would be the big twist of it all.
How do you think Shmi got pregnant?
Oh, we know. It was Palpatine playing with the midichlorians.
Oh my God.
That's what jizz is called, midichlorians. There you go.
Yes, it's midi jizz.
That's the end count.
Makes it kind of weird that the Dr. Pershing wants Baby Yoda's midichlorians now, but
no, yeah.
Well, if you think about how they did the episode, he was more fascinated in him as a creature because he didn't want to kill him. He didn't want him dead. He was fascinated in him as a scientist. Obviously, he's doing his job as a scientist, getting the midichlorians for the project they're doing. But he was fascinated in him as a creature and didn't want him harmed.
Yeah, I still find it crazy. What would you do if I told you like a week before the show started that we'd be talking about midichlorians in the Mandalorian? I think it's so crazy, but.
I don't think anyone would have expected it.
Yeah, that's
my next project, Sith Holocron.
Oh, okay. You're gonna use the you ever read that Book of Sith? I have a copy, but there's like that big holocron.
I wanted that thing so bad.
It is so expensive. It's like $500 on eBay.
Here's the thing.
Oh my God.
I saw it early on Amazon. On Amazon, they were like this is about 5-6 years ago, I think. And it was like $60. And at the time, I was like, do I really want to spend $60 on this? I don't know. I'll wait. Let me put it in my save for later, And then when I looked at it like 6 months later, it was like, oh, it's gone. Check back later. And I can never find it again. Then I started looking it up. And like you said, it's like $500. I'm like, holy hell. I should have bought this thing. I should have bought 10 of them.
Yeah. A lot of demand for it now. I don't think they make them anymore. And that's why it's like
they had the Sith one. They had the Jedi book. They had the Bounty Hunter one.
And then there's the Imperial Handbook. I want all of them, of course, but the Sith and the Jedi one are the most interesting. The other two are kind of like meh for me, but yeah, Sith holocrons are pretty cool.
And listen, I like giving back. I got some, guys. I will try. If you guys subscribe to all, obviously you subscribe to Star Wars Only if you're here. Subscribe to Goldman, subscribe to my channel, and I'll do a giveaway and give away a Sith holocron to someone on one of my shows.
Yeah, I think that's a good deal.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you gotta subscribe to me and Goldman. You gotta subscribe to both the channels. Hook it up, and then we'll do a giveaway for this.
Yeah, and you have to comment something specific, like
Yes.
jizz in Star Wars.
There you go. Jizz and Star Wars.
That's how we'll know that you're from Chatooine.
That's
other
completely
question-
unforgettable now. If I see that comment,
Yeah,
I know
honestly.
exactly what it's for.
Last big question from the community tab was when will Lucasfilm announce? Oh, actually, no, my bad. Wrong one. It was if you were head of Lucasfilm, what would you do with Star Wars, and what would the movies and TV shows you make for the future of Star Wars?
I would let people obviously do something like The Mandalorian. I'd have so many different projects. I think I would just be exploring all eras. We got something like The Mandalorian.
Claude series.
Boy. One thing, yes, Claude. I'd probably have something after the Rise of Skywalker, probably something in the Old Republic, something like the High Republic too. I'd be exploring all the eras. I'd probably move away from the films and really focus on like an animated show or a lot of animated series and a lot of live action series and the books.
What about you, Lunga? What are you doing? Oh,
Revan. Oh,
Knights of the Old Republic, Revan, Malik, the whole Revan saga, starting out as a Jedi, the Mandalorian Wars, becoming Darth Revan, losing his memory, becoming Revan again, fighting Malik. That's what I would do.
okay.
And not as a movie either. That would have to be an epic, multi-season series like Game of Thrones. That's how KOTOR needs to be done.
I like that, and you're gonna do like the Star Wars Underworld's budget, where it's like $50 million per episode.
It's gotta be
Just go
tons of
all
money.
out.
Yes, it's gotta be all.
Yeah.
It's gotta be tons of money.
Bankrupt Disney.
And then in the last season, give it up because I have a Netflix contract and say, "Yeah, we don't really care," and then make it suck.
I like that. Personally, if I was Lucasfilm president, I would do Old Republic stuff. Do a trilogy on how the Republic formed in general, and just like the war between the Jedi and the Sith, and what eventually like destroyed the Sith. And then I would make a series on Jar Jar Binks. Yeah,
Oh, Lord.
just
Darth Jar Jar. It's gotta be Darth Jar Jar.
Darth Jar Jar. And also, since I'm Lucasfilm president, I literally would just spend my days watching documentaries and reading books on like what Lucas was like behind the scenes, and just make memes. I would make the official Star Wars Instagram account and Twitter account, just post nothing but memes.
no, actually,
we know what you'd be doing. You'd be like saying, "Can you put George on my calendar for today?" But he was on your calendar yesterday. Put him back on today. I need to talk to him. It's urgent importance. And then he would come in like, "What? What's
get
going
all the
on?" And you're like, "Oh, I just wanted to say hi."
how about this? The very first thing I would do is call up Ryan Johnson and say, just let you know your trilogy is happening. It's gonna happen very soon. That's what I would do.
Oh
I'd be calling up saying, "Good luck in all the rest of your movies because you are never touching Star Wars again."
I would try to troll everyone that I could, like the Doomcock and Mike Zeros of the world. Like I would, since I'm so petty against like fake news, I literally would send those guys a cease and desist, and I would say, if you ever put out fake news again, I will fucking get your channel taken down, or I'll even make it worse. Anytime they say something, I'll just retweet it. any scoop they have, just scare the Star Wars fandom of like Ryan Johnson just got canceled by George Lucas, and just retweet. Like, wait, is this fucking real? Like, I think that would.
You have the Disney Plus account, and Disney Plus is constantly retweeting Doomcock.
Doomcock, very family friendly guy named Doomcock. Last question for the community tab, and then we'll call it a day. Is if we do meet a young Luke, how do you think they will do it from a real world perspective? Do they de-age Mark Hamill, or do you guys think they're going to do the Sebastian Stan guy?
At least a new actor, probably Sebastian Stan. I mean, he has Mark Hamill's seal of approval.
Yep.
I think Sebastian Stan even said he would love to do it, but there's no way Mark Hamill would do it. I'm pretty sure he said he's done with Luke Skywalker. Also, the aging wouldn't work. I mean, this is shortly after Return of the Jedi. Mark Hamill is significantly older than Luke would be in this show. Maybe he'll like consult Sebastian Stan, whatever actor, but yeah, definitely not Mark Hamill.
Same boat. Yeah. So bring in Sebastian Stan. There's nobody else. I mean, I'm sure there probably is somebody else, but there's nobody else that can play him. He looks exactly like him. I mean, when they do those faces, it's like they're not even deep fakes. It's just literally cropping his head on the body, and it's him.
We all have a twin in the world, and Mark Hamill found his young twin which I guess that means maybe in 30, 40 years when Sebastian Stan gets older and looks like Mark Hamill today, I can hit him up and be like, hey, we're going to retcon the sequel trilogy and start all over. So,
as long as Claude's still in episode 9, I'm okay with it.
What do you think the third movie is going to be called? It's not going to be called The Rise of Skywalker. It's going to be called The Rise of Claudes.
Claudes?
Yeah. It's going to be multiple.
It'd be a horror movie, jeez. Like,
How about Darth Claude? Ooh.
No, yeah, Darth Claude. He may have no arms.
Six lightsabers for all of his antennas.
Oh, God.
It's like General Grievous on drugs.
It's the dark side of the penis.
Oh man, I'm excited for the Claude series, but thank you all for tuning in. That's all the time we have today. So if you enjoy us here on Chatooine, make sure you subscribe to Darth Daddy Lunga and the Goldman's channel, who links are in the description below. Can't wait to see you all here again next week. If you like the content we do, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe on the video because it does about the show. We will see you all next time, and may the Force be with you always.